All
Cool.
right, Chris, the floor is yours.
Can someone confirm for me that like they can see stuff?
Yep, we're good.
Cool. Bear with me 30 seconds while I just pull a Zoom chat like over here. I'm going to be dropping some links in there as we go. But for those of you that are like curious now, hey, here's a link to the slide deck, y'all. I would really encourage you to go grab that, go play with that. I'm just moving stuff around. You know how it is. Modern problems, too many monitors, windows don't go the right places. Anyway, I think we're good now. I am joined by my cat teaching assistant, Mies. He actually really wanted to learn about faculty grief too. And it's a real sad thing because he's just so young to learn about this, but alas. Anyway, hey everyone, I'm Chris. Welcome to the Teaching and Learning and the AI Grief Cycle Talk. Let's talk about it. So, quick, I wanted to give you the QR code. I already dropped the link in chat for this, but if you do not have that link, or if it's easier to scan on your phone or whatever, hey, here's a QR code. Please take a sec, pull out your phone, take a shot of that, and you'll be good. Or again, just pull it out of the chat, whatever's easier for you. I'm going to give it a few seconds for people to pull it from here, though. Keep letting people in. All right, cool. I'm going to assume y'all have that now. If you don't, if someone joins late, I don't know, someone please be a good colleague and just drop that link in chat. I would love that. Otherwise, I can too. I still got to copy paste it. But let's keep going forward. So, going through today's agenda, we're going to do a quick intro, get to know me, who I am, all that jazz. And then after that, here one sec, admit, moving more Zoom stuff around. Then after that, we're going to do a deep dive into the Kubler-Ross grief cycle, DABDA. And kind of just talk through what is this, what are the different steps, and then kind of do a deep dive on how might these different steps very specifically look for faculty dealing with grief around how AI has impacted their pedagogy. Then we're going to take a brief little interlude, talk about unrelated things, well, things that are related, but some just kind of realities of the situation we need to address before finally looking at ways to kind of embrace the moment, doing some storytelling exercise, sharing some resources, and then ending with a nice Q&A. Hopefully, I want to be clear. I am someone who loves the sound of my own voice. So I tried to do a thing where there's mostly me talking at the beginning and then I get to shut up and just listen. So please, I'm doing my best. But again, drop stuff in the chat. I will absolutely be monitoring that as we go. I got it pulled up to my left right over here right now. But speaking of which, who am I? Let's talk about me really quick. Who's this guy who's talking? As a teacher, I am someone who's taught since 2011. I've taught at the high school level and at the university level at CU Boulder. And I cannot tell you how many times I have been at a professional development talk and been like, I don't know if this person knows what they're talking about. So instead, I'm just going to lead with my bona fides, and you are free to judge accordingly. If you're after this slide, if you're like, I don't think this guy knows what he's talking about, you are absolutely welcome to just chill and watch. Please don't be mean about it, but I understand. But hey, I'm Chris Ostro. I'm an assistant teaching professor over in continuing education at CU Boulder, teaching program for writing and rhetoric courses. And I'm also the AI and learning specialist for the learning design group there. Currently, I am co-running the universe, like the continuing ed version of the AI ambassador program, which is something we can talk about later. But it's been me and two other people running it. And this is kind of one of the things that inspired a lot of this talk, because a lot of that program ran into these initial hurdles where just different faculty were at different, like really different emotional places with how they were, I guess, just compensating around the changes of the moment. So we'll talk about that. But beyond that, a few other random facts about me that might just affect your judgment. I'm what I'd call an AI realist, very much in that like Leon Furs sort of vein, where I think these things have very clear measurable positives and negatives. And I'm not here as a shill. I'm not here to like sell you a product or tell you, you got to do this. What you do in your classroom, I think, is entirely up to you. But I think it's important that we be informed and intentional with whatever we do. And then beyond that, I want you to know I'm still teaching, right? I'm not some person who taught 20 years ago and I'm basing this off out of date knowledge. When I'm done here, I have to go grade papers for my first year writing class, right? I'm teaching in person and online. My in person is a first year class. My online is an upper level class. And I'm also teaching relatively smaller classes, right? One of the nice perks of teaching a writing course is my courses are generally 15 to 25 students, probably an average of like 18 to 19. So that might be different experience than what you have had. And then last few things, right? I take a process over a product approach, right? Again, I teach writing. I don't want to say I don't care about the final product, but what I care about so much more is the journey to get to that final product. And I also take a harm reduction approach to this AI moment. Again, these tools have better and worse approaches and uses and safer and less safe uses. And I firmly believe that educating our students is the way to get them to like veer towards the better directions there rather than just chiding them. Finally, I am not some published expert on grief, but I would call myself a grief enthusiast. So, for whatever that's worth, please do not take this as like, oh, yes, Chris published psych professor in grief. Alas, I wish. But again, just a casual purveyor of the grief arts. But moving on, we're looking at that Kubler-Ross grief cycle as mentioned before. So again, 5 stages of grief. I'm sure you've all heard this before. Just to kind of touch on it really briefly, right? Kubler-Ross coined this in '69, and people have added to it, removed from it. But I just wanted to use the bare bones model. It's also kind of a building block of a lot of change management approaches, but you've probably seen it somewhere. But the idea is that generally, when people encounter something that gives them grief, some loss, some change, some transition, some loss of control. What? Oh yeah, sorry. But yeah, I thought you were saying the slide deck skipped. I was like, oh no. But anyway, yeah. But generally speaking, people go from denial to anger to bargaining to depression to acceptance. But I want to be really clear on a few things. Humans are complicated. We're not linear, right? You might be in the bargaining phase and still really angry, or you might be in the acceptance phase and still sad, right? You might go from bargaining back to anger to depression, back to anger. That's okay. Someone once said to me, all models are bad, some are just useful. And I think this kind of falls into that category to me. If you are someone who feels yourself going back to anger, don't be like, oh no, I'm broken. No, you're just human. That's okay. It's not a linear thing. But we're actually adding a 6th one here. You can see from my very artistic, fancy art skills, I did not have GenAI make this image at least. But we're actually going to put a 6th stage of grief here, which is action, right? Acceptance is not just, by the way, acceptance, we're not just saying that you accept whatever the university says or whatever, right? That's not quite what we mean by acceptance. We mean more accepting the reality of the situation. But the next step, action, is what you do with that. Once you actually are kind of clear-eyed and looking at the playing field in front of you, how do you approach it? And so that's what we're going to talk about in that 6th step. So without any further ado, let's just jump into the denial, right? The D in DABDA. I guess there's 2 Ds. The first D, the primary D in DABDA. So for all of these DABDA parts, what I've tried to do is sort of lead with casual remarks that I've heard faculty say, or that I myself have said, that feel like they fall into that category. And then at the end of each of these, we're going to actually see like an excerpt from a real conversation. These are all anonymous, but these are with real people that I have interacted with at CU or abroad, or not abroad, but outside of the university. And these are really raw little testimonials that we'll kind of contextualize and react to. But how denial might look. So first, it's easier to act like it's not happening in my course. I think a lot of people have felt this, right? My students would never do that. Or honestly, my field is so special. GenAI really can't do the stuff all that well. Or a robot can't do what I do. It's too human. I do poetry or dance, right? I can spot GenAI output from a mile away. I hear so many faculty say that, which is statistically not true. It also doesn't matter anyway. Right? That's a thing I hear a lot, this initially nihilistic response. And then finally, I hear a lot of people in denial about how much cheating happens. I want to be clear, I'm not someone who thinks that every student cheats. I think the data actually does not show that at all, but it is increased since these tools. The data does show that as well. But anyway, denial, just looking at the situation and saying, nah. So again, here's an example. Back in 2023, when I was talking with a colleague of mine, a higher up who I will keep anonymous, I was venting to them about the way that ChatGPT was really impacting my class. And this is the reaction I got. So I'm going to ask, just take a second, take 1 minute, read this quote over, and then drop your reaction in chat. How does this feel to you? Is this something that feels relatable, maybe a place you've been in, or is it something that feels totally ridiculous and unrelatable? This gives me a chance to drink some coffee for a sec while you read. I should say this was not someone in the classroom at this point, by the way. This was someone who had stepped into a leadership administrative role. Yeah, I'm seeing a few people in chat already responds. Yeah, I totally agree with you, Kay. I think it felt different for me because, and for us maybe, because we're in the classroom. I'm seeing that it's impacting these things differently. But whenever, when I tried to ring those initial alarm bells, again, this was summer of 2023 is when I pulled this from, it just hit different. Oh yeah, the comparisons to VR, the comparisons to MOOCs. I wish this was as disruptive as VR. You see that headset I have behind me that I'm not wearing and has not actually entered my classroom other than as an occasional fun toy? I wish that's what GenAI was, but it's not. But anyway, again, I think I'm seeing some conversation in chat here about Higher institutions absorb tech. Yep, 100%. All right, so I'm going to move on. I think we've all experienced some sort of response like this from someone. Man, people are just going off on this in chat. All right, I'm going to read more of this later. Uh, oof, it's meant to be helpful, but it's absolutely not. What a great way to put that, Leanne. Yeah, absolutely. Love it. So let's go on then, right? Especially if you are someone experienced this. When I heard this response in 2023, what did it lead me to? It led me to anger because it feels like a dismissive response in a real way, right? It's trying to avoid dealing with the problem by saying it's not a problem. So how might anger sound? Well, there's a bunch of stuff. By the way, I also tried to mix in like reasons people might be angry. So with anger, one of the things I see is just the hugely increased workload without additional compensation, right? On record reporting at CU, they doubled the length of the form. It's so much more intensive now, right? Beyond that, so much time is spent playing cops and robbers with my students that distinctly is less fun and makes people a little more angry. Also, having to learn about this stuff in unpaid spare time is a really good reason people might be a little upset. Also, a lot of faculty I interact with feel a real lack of support from their university, whether it's CU or abroad. I keep saying abroad. I just mean outside. Again, I'm not anyway. Also, suddenly, the reality of the situation is that all assessments are currently unsecurable, and we really have no idea how to move forward with that. That is a giant issue. Beyond that, there's, hypothetically, some of us might work at a university that made a giant financial deal around AI and didn't consult faculty, which is another thing that led to some real grievance. And finally, there's a lot of anger I often pick up from faculty about just feeling gaslit about these AI conversations, that they're trying to go to these conversations and have a say in the state of their workplace, and instead they're getting managed. And that is pretty frustrating. So in these next slides, I actually have two different examples here. The one on the left, this is from someone who has been teaching for a long time. They are near the end of their career. They're pretty jaded about the status of the university anyway. And I just want to give that context there. The person on the right is someone who's in the middle of their career and is really struggling with how these things feel. So again, take a second, just read these over, and I just want to know how you feel about either of these. Do either of these really strike a chord with you? Are these things you might have said or felt, or are either of them just totally off base and ridiculous to you? Take one sec, just read these over. Love to see those notes in the comments in the chat. Okay, Kay, it is its own country. That, I guess that is the implication of my misspeaks. But yeah, how do we feel about these quotes? Anything here really resonate, feel like something we have felt before, I guess, is what I'm ultimately getting at. Yeah, Cynthia, I think that's something I didn't add on the slide, but I've actually heard similar things from faculty of feeling othered from your own work. I made this thing that then the university or my students even used a bunch of Gen AI tools on, and now it's suddenly not really mine. Yeah, the customer service approach there, Jennifer, 100%, right? I think both of these quotes, one of the reasons I like them is they're both really getting at what they see as this disconnect between people in the front line and people making decisions. And this disconnect has existed forever. Hey, I just got done rereading the Iliad. Literally, this is the same disconnect that drives the plot of that whole story, right? But it's really easy right now if you're someone who's in the classroom. And again, that one on the right, there's actually, if you have the slide deck open, I would encourage you to click on that full text, right? So there's a link here. This person gave me a really long, like a 3-page response. I couldn't fit it on here, but it's pretty powerful to me. So moving on, once you're feeling angry, once you start moving past that, the logical thing is to figure out what can I do about it. And I think a lot of people enter this in that bargaining phase. Is that bargaining phase? Do I still have that link? I do. But yeah, in that bargaining phase, right? You're trying to figure out what can you do? What are the places you can meet people in the middle here? And so what I often hear from faculty with bargaining, so how it sounds to me, right? First, maybe if I allow it this way, they'll stop cheating or using it in these other ways. Or, okay, I have some assignments with tight controls and other ones that, it's a little more loose and students can do whatever they want. But this way I can meet students where they are. Or, hey, I just updated all my major assessments to make them AI proof, which isn't a thing that exists. Or, oof, I'm going to have to start reading up on all this stuff eventually. Or, I don't mind being flexible, but when does it end? Like, when will it be enough? How much flexibility is a reasonable thing to ask of me? And I have two upcoming, I actually have two different examples here. They're on different slides because I don't know, I could not find a better way to do it. So I'm dropping this. Well, you have the slide deck open. I would encourage you to read both. But I included both of these because these are two different faculty at very different places in their career. This first one is a young faculty member who is currently, still just trying to get more classes, make a name for themselves, have their classes hit really well. They get offered more courses. Maybe they can use that to climb the ladder. This is someone at the beginning of their career and the way that they're experiencing the pressure versus this is someone who is 20 years into their career. They have a really good idea what they're doing in the classroom, but oh no, are there two of the? Oh, well then delete mine. I don't know what I just pasted in there, but that's on me. Thank you so much, Leanne. You're the best. But anyway, taking a look at this bargaining one, right? This second one is from someone who's way later in their career, and they have existing workflows that these tools are actually changing. So I wanted you to read both of these. Again, I'm sorry I can't have them all in one slide, but then it would have been like 8-point font, and I would have, that's bad for a bunch of reasons. And I would encourage you to just read either of these. And again, I'm curious, does this strike a chord with you? Does this feel like anything you have felt? Do you see anything that you connect with in either of these? Yeah, that initiative burnout. I'm glad you named it like that, Teresa. Anyone else? Anyone else have any things in this that really resonate with them? Yeah, Kat, totally, right? I'm not like a cop teacher, and I keep hearing from fact that we feel like we've been forced, all of us, into becoming cop teachers because of these texts. Anyone else have any other reactions for either or of these quotes, the bargaining ones? We'll go to the second one here to keep this up for a second. One of the things that really resonates with me on the second one is how this person connects it to COVID. That like it basically feels like since 2020 they never got to stop reworking their classes, right? Like it's basically just been perpetual rebuild every semester for 5 years, and that's tiring. And that core question of, ship of Theseus style, at what point does this stop being my class? Right? If I keep cutting out core content to make room for AI literacy assignments or to make room for, I guess I have to do in-class assessments because it's the only thing secure now, or whatever. How much time can I really cut instructionally away before it stops being a well-supported course? I feel that very acutely. Absolutely, Brandon. I love that. Right. So again, I think it's pretty easy to see how these different experiences of bargaining partially are because of where the different people are in their career. But let's move on. So once you're done bargaining and you realize how it kind of never ends, you could put 1,000,000 hours into updating your class and the university would still ask for 1,000,001. The next logical place people end up is depression. Sadly, there is no character named Depression in Inside Out, but we're just going to work with this. Her name's Depression, just for the sake of this presentation. And what depression might look like, right? The change is never ending since the pandemic. I've just been stuck doing this. Students have real learning deficits post-COVID, and it's not clear how to effectively support that. And actually, tech literacy is a real issue, and this is just furthering that divide. All of these tools are making the students who are ahead get more ahead, and the students who are behind feel more behind. I feel powerless about the direction of my university. Again, maybe hypothetically, they signed a big deal. Or on the other end, right? Feeling powerless in my own classroom. All of my policies and all the ways I used to do things aren't working. It's also putting distance between myself and my students. And it's not like there's a shortage of those things in 2026, And I'd love training on this, but with what time? So many faculty I talk to work multiple jobs. And the conversation we're having is they're like, I had to call into my other job so I could go to this training. That's a rough position to be in. And finally, feeling the university doesn't care about their teaching. And so going forward, here we have a depression example. This one is from someone who's taught about as long as me. I think she's been a classroom instructor 15 years, but she has really made her career a little more focused on online teaching. And I just think that context matters here. So take a second, read this one over. It's a little longer. I think this is the longest one for what it's worth. But take a second, read this one over, and I want to hear again, How do you react to this? Do you hear any of yourself in this quote, or maybe hear any of your colleagues in this quote? And I don't know, just how does it resonate? Take a second, give it a read. Let me sip my coffee. Yeah, Kat, I think thank you so much for saying that out loud because I think that is the sort of thing a lot of us have felt. It also not only are there no good options, but there to me, the thing I've heard from a lot of faculties, it also feels like there aren't options that are ever enough. Like even if I do this thing that I've been asked to do next semester, I'm going to be asked to do another time consuming thing, right? That it's just never ending. And also none of them ever solve anything permanently anyway. Yeah, right. Absolutely. Well, and I will say this person is in a really difficult spot because so many of their courses, they've built like a real career on it being an asynchronous online teacher. It's not even clear what the options are for them. And I think they're really struggling with that. And I think hopefully, they come to some conference talks here. I've seen a few good talks at the ELK schedule. So maybe they're at those. Anyway, um, cool. All right, I'm going to keep going forward then. So I kind of feel like at this point I've bummed all of you out enough. So we're going to take a brief interlude. I'm sorry. But, hey, we just ended with the whole thing about how hopeless everything feels. So let's take a break because we have to have some important stuff that we got to nail down before we move forward. So, first, grief is meant to be processed, not lived in. I think one of the things I keep running into with faculty I'm working with is they're angry and they're still in that phase where they prefer to keep being angry rather than starting to fix things. Or they're still sad and they're just continuing to be sad. Grief is not meant to be lived in. It will not be healthy or good for you to be there long term. It won't be good for your students. They're not going to learn a bunch that way either, right? There's a ton of those issues. And staying in grief longer than you need to is, well, not the healthiest, to say it vaguely. Again, not a doctor. But secondly, our students need us to guide them in this moment. I want to add on to this that already studies are showing that lower AI literacy makes people way more susceptible to Gen AI products and scams. And right now is the chance that we have to really limit that damage, right? The more that we actually instill some decent AI literacy in our students, no matter how pissed off and hurt we are about what's happening in our classrooms, this is the moment we have that matters. And look, there's a few harsh realities we've just got to face here. First, these tools are here and they are omnipresent, whether you like that or not. I have said it a million times. If I had a big red button that I could just like slap and it would undo the last, I don't know, let's just say decade for the sake of convenience, and we could redo the way that all of these tools rolled out, I'd push it in a heartbeat. And it would probably be terrible for my career to do so. But I think that would be better for learning long term. But that button doesn't exist. Those tools are here and we have to deal with them. The next reality, the future of our universities and our careers are being decided right now. This is the moment. Like, this is it. What we do and the kind of best practices we set up, the workflows we set up, the precedents we set up, the guardrails we set up, and the mistakes we make, all of those things are part of determining this trajectory. Also, there is not a tech answer to all these things, right? Before people showed up, we were talking about AI detection. And, this is pre-recording, but the thing we were talking about was largely that, yeah, actually AI detection is becoming a solved problem. Pangram has done that really well, but also it doesn't functionally matter, right? No, at this point, we have to get into a pedagogical conversation. Our students are already using these tools. Just knowing that 8% of my student paper is written by AI doesn't tell me much, right? These are like people-oriented social problems. Also, another thing, there is no waiting for guidance here. This is, I think, the harshest truth that I want to deliver to you. But I think a lot of people are waiting for leadership who knows more than them to tell them what to do. There are no reinforcements. Like, through dint of historical accident, we are the people who are here who have to figure this out. It's us. That's it. And that's a lot of responsibility. And it sucks. And what we do here is going to really determine, like, down the road, 30, 50 years down the road, how universities are dealing with this. But we got to stop waiting. Also, the reality is students are already using these tools in huge numbers, right? This Kadzierski et al. Study, I'd encourage you to take a look at. This was at CU Boulder doing this internal survey of students. They interviewed about 10% of students. Thank you, CTL. And 80% of students admit to using these tools at least weekly. That's a lot, right? That's too much for us to just act like it's not happening. Also, there are better and worse use cases. If you've ever read this Bastani et al. Paper, or if you've just like hung out with me and talked about AI, you've heard me talk about this paper too much. Um, this paper outlines very clear ways that AI helped in this math teacher's classroom, but also the way that self-guided use totally eroded student learning. Also, students want training on these tools. Another thing from that Kazierski et al. Study, the ETRA study that CTL did, is that they had a whole like 70 to 75% of students said they wanted more AI training. How rare is it that students are asking for more homework? But I think we should pause on this for a sec because we have a moment here. We have an opportunity. We have a thing that everyone is doing, whether they admit to it or not. We have a thing that there are better and worse, safer and less safe ways to do. And we have a thing that students and people want to know how to do better. That just sounds like sex and drugs, right? And we are dangerously, dangerously close to accidentally starting some abstinence only education sort of approaches to AI. And I really want to push against that. I want to be clear. I don't care what you do in your I mean, I do care, but like, I am not here to tell you what to do in your classroom. If you take this harsh anti-AI approach to your classroom, that's fine. That's your own purview as an instructor. But the only way to do that is actually to have high AI literacy. If you actually want to keep this stuff out of your classroom, you need to know more about it, not less. You need to talk to your students more about it, not less. Right? I think taking this abstinence only approach is a real mistake. It didn't work for sex. It didn't work for drugs. Hell, DARE made people more likely to do drugs, right? And it's not going to work here. So we got to pivot. And I think part of that pivot is what gets us to acceptance. And again, like I said before, acceptance does not mean just blindly accepting whatever you have to. Well, the university told me I have to do it this way. No, but it's accepting the reality of the situation, right? It's raining. Yeah, it is. What do I do about that? So let's talk about what acceptance might sound like. So all my students are using this. All right, I'm going to have to figure this out. Okay, I found a pretty clever use there. That's students. That's a pretty good idea. All right. I guess this is part of my job now. Again, acceptance doesn't have to mean you're not still frustrated, you're not still upset, you're not still mad. It just means moving forward. Can I even use assessment? How do I replace this, right? You're starting to ask those questions. There's so much I need to learn. Where can I start? Does my university even offer trainings on this stuff? Spoilers, they probably do. And also, I think the Bastani piece is hyperlinked on that slide. Sorry, I just saw that in the chat. If people have this open, you can just click it. I don't know why it turned the hyperlinks black, but that's just what it did on this setup. But also, noticing that there are cons to these things, but that they might be manageable in some ways, and that there actually might be some opportunities these things lead to. And so here for this acceptance example, this is a conversation I was having with someone who's a pretty big leader in the AI and ed field. Again, all these people ask to be kept anonymous, so I'm being vague, but trying to provide context. And this is someone, we were talking back and forth about just over the last 20 years, how we noticed our teaching change. And this is something she shared with me that really stuck with me. I would encourage you all, take a sec, read this over, and let me know if this resonates with any of you. Just watching that chat like a hawk. This gives me a chance to scroll. Thank you while you're reading. Brenda, your point makes rational sense, but that doesn't change anything, right? A ton of students are not like, they're paying tuition for a credential often. And that depends on the student. I don't want to like broad strokes. Everyone is different, right? But, I have a student that I literally last semester had a whole breakdown with because I caught her using AI unethically in violation of the policy that we'd agreed to in class. And when push came to shove, what she said was, I don't care about learning as much as I do about making my parents' mortgage payment. That like my parents took out a mortgage to send me to college, that matters more, right? I think that trying to find a rational response to things that people did not arrive to rationally doesn't help. Some people, they come to college wanting to learn, and then one day they have a bad weekend where they have a shift that they get called into, their friend gets broken up with, and they have to help their friend deal with that. And all of a sudden, they don't have the time they needed for that assignment. And the problem with GenAI is it offers great opportunities to use these things ethically, but also it offers a very low risk, high reward button to get out of an assignment that some students see it as that at least. And I think that's where the tension is between these things. So I'm just going back through the chat and seeing other things. Ooh, yeah, that joy. I think I'm happy so many of you pulled your eyes to that joy conversation. I think that a lot too, right? And the discussion of notice where this speaker is finding positives. For some of my neurodivergent learners, this has been a miracle, right? Yes, there are tons of ways this has been not a miracle, but there's also tons of ways it's been great. And so finally, once we're at that place where we're willing to accept that there are some pros and cons, better and worse, we can start moving forward to that action phase. I'll be honest, I spent so long looking for a good action photo. This is what we ended on because I just thought it was such a sick flip. Anyway, but what action might look like? First, trusting your students and discussing policy use and decisions with them. And I want to be clear, this doesn't mean they always get their way, right? I think that this is a mistake young teachers make all the time. It's just because I'm consulting with my students, they must therefore know exactly what's best. No, but they are stakeholders. And they should be, the moment that you start including your students and like, here's the AI policy I have, here's why I have it this way. What do you all think? And what are suggestions you might have to update it? Even if you dismiss everything they said, they will feel more included. That goes so far to building that classroom culture. But also being clear and decisive with your AI policy. So many people just have policies that say like, don't cheat. And that's just not clear. What does that mean? Also, things I keep hearing, like, I wonder if tools can solve X problem in my class. Now that we're at the end of this AI ambassador program that I was co-running, so many of these faculty are showing up and asking questions about other parts of their assignments and other parts of their courses. So now that I know this tool works this way, I was kind of thinking I could use it for this. Would it do that? Hell yeah. Like, that is such a good question to be asking. Also, it's made some stuff easier or fun or more accessible. Also, how can I build a classroom culture? How can I build classroom culture solutions to GenAI misuse? A great question when I hear faculty asking that sort of thing. And to that end, how can I start working AI literacy into my curriculum? Like I said, AI literacy is one of those things where if you can really start hitting that in your classroom now, that's going to really pay dividends down the road for your students. That is a thing that materially matters and will give them the best chance of using these tools successfully while also avoiding the pitfalls. And finally, pushing myself and my students toward metacognition, i.e., how am I using these tools and why, not just I am using these tools. So for action, this is a quote from someone who's been in the classroom for, I think, let's say 15 to 20 years. And again, I just take a second and read this and see if any of this really resonates with you. See if any of these things strike your ear funnily or if, these sound correct. I also realized I could have done this clearer. Start here, go to the bottom here, start here, go to the bottom there. Sorry. But yeah, does any of this sound like, does this resonate with anyone? Does anything here sound good, bad, silly, stupid, smart, brilliant, whatever? Does any of this just strike a nerve? Yeah. Jennifer, I couldn't agree more, right? I think that's one of the things that strikes me the most here is it seems like this person was able to get out of the cop place with their class. Not perfect, I mean, no class is perfect. I'm sure there's still the occasional honor code issue. There's still the occasional, like, did the student cheat sort of moment. But notice how that's not what the focus of this is, right? The focus of this piece is like how they've kind of gotten back on the same side as their students. And I think that's mattered a lot. Just reading through the chat. I can actually answer that question, Leanne. This is someone who I know. I can assure you they teach classes somewhat similar to mine. So we're going to say 20 students per class. I don't know their exact class counts, but I know some of the courses they've taught. I'm going to guess 20 is kind of a ballpark. Sure. I mean, again, also, I can say this about this person. They definitely do teach asynchronously, at least a little bit. I don't know if it's their main thing, but they do occasionally because that's how I met them, was supporting them in an async class. Yeah, I agree, Matt. I think whoever this is someone in a good place. So we're moving on, but I just want to touch on this. So we're now going to get into this storytelling activity. I wanted to give a quick shout out to Blair Young and Matt Nesselrott for this. They are both in CTL, and they are people who I collaborated with in making this. Matt did all the heavy lifting because he actually is like a psychology grief expert, but couldn't make it today, so I'm doing it. But we are going to do breakout rooms. I'm so sorry. I hope all of you love it, though. fingers crossed. And here's what we're going to do. So I'm going to drop a link in chat, and maybe this is the link that I accidentally sent before. Maybe. If this is the link I sent before, whoopsie, you got a preview. And if it was not, that's on me. But here's what we're going to do is you're going to go take a look, and you're going to first take 2 to 3 minutes. Let's just put a number to it. Let's say 2 minutes. You're going to write your own very short story. Notice none of these are meant to be long, right? The kind of 5 prompts that we gave here are a 3-act story, kind of starting with balance, out of balance, and then balance. What would that look like? Or secondly, a short form social media post, i.e., imagine you're writing an old school pre-2018 Twitter tweet. What does that 140 characters look like for your growth here in your response to all this? Or an abstract. Imagine you're writing an academic article on the AI grief cycle as you've experienced it. What do you hit in that story? And then also iterate maybe on a previous idea. Maybe you liked one of the quotes from earlier here and you wanted to imagine yourself problematizing that quote, conversing with that person. Or finally, do whatever feels right. If you just have an idea that you want to free write, I mean, I'm a writing professor, right? I'm not going to be like, no, don't be creative. No, absolutely, be creative. And some questions I want you to consider here are A, where are you in this whole cycle now? B, what are moments that got you there? I don't know about you, but I have very clear moments of absolutely of anger, of depression, and and acceptance and action, I guess, right? But I have very clear stories for each of them, right? What is yours? And finally, ideally, I want you to consider what might your ideal classroom look like in 5 years. And so again, I'm going to kick you all into rooms. In that room, you're going to spend the first 2 to 3 minutes. I'm just going to say 2 minutes. I don't know why I keep saying 2 or 3. You're going to spend 2 minutes writing your story. Then you're going to spend 2 minutes kind of sharing per person. So each of you have 2 minutes kind of talk about it and maybe discuss. And then finally, we're going to come back together, do this whole thing as a big discussion, and then have that segue into Q&A. Does all that make sense? Any questions?
So I wonder from an instructional design perspective, right? Somebody who is faculty support,
Mhm.
what can I do to assist faculty in moving forward through the steps of grief?
Yeah, that's
Maybe
a
not necessarily, into action of some sort, but
sure.
hopefully getting them there.
I mean, hey, that's a big ask. I mean, if
Oh
you
yeah.
could grief also, it's one of the things I haven't said here, but that is just true. Is like it also does just take some amount of time, right? Like no one is going to go from my whole job just got disrupted to I'm happy in an hour. Would that it were that easy, but it's not. I think more than anything, I think creating space for people to feel heard matters a lot. Because I will say, because my role is weird, I'm half faculty, half staff, so I'm constantly kind of straddling this line. But there have been no shortage of places at CU, at least that I've seen, where faculty go there trying to feel heard and again end up feeling sort of dismissed or managed. And I think
Yeah.
that's a big problem, right? So anything you can do that just creates like, hey, I can't promise I can change it, but I'm absolutely happy to just listen to what's going right and wrong in your class, right?
Yeah.
Hey, here's a safe space where I'm absolutely not going to go tattle on you unless you say like I'm doing criminal things in the classroom.
Right, right.
But like if you just want to vent, I'm totally game for that. I think a lot of that goes a long way because I do think I'm seeing this personally. I see this the most acutely with adjuncts, and a big part of it is like they're already so isolated, and this is just isolating them more, right? Like now the experience of teaching is changing so dramatically because underneath all of this, part of the issue is that I would argue Gen AI has really disrupted and delaminated the power structures of most universities. What I mean is like the people at the highest level know the least about what's happening and vice versa, right? People at the lowest level who have no power, who get paid like $3,000 per class, suddenly they're the ones who are actually the most informed on what's on fire, but
Yeah.
they're the least capable of doing anything about it. And I think that leads to some real awkward tensions. And so just anything that lets people feel actually heard, I think goes a long way. At one of these AI ambassador meetings we had, there was a meeting. It was the 3 of us running it and the 17 participants, and something like 5 of them cried.
Oh
Right. And
wow.
like literally just making space to let people break down and have it be okay
Yeah.
was helpful.
Yeah.
Like, because one of those people now is someone I met with yesterday, and she's doing badass work with how she's like starting to integrate some of the stuff into her classroom. But the reality was, like, she was never going to start making that forward progress until she'd been allowed to cry and sort of move forward, you know?
Yeah, and maybe that's part of it. I think is there are pressures to kind of just make faculty get over it and
100%.
that is not going to happen. I mean, particularly in the CU system with, ChatGPT rolling out soon to students and those chats being 100% private and
And also those chats. Sorry, I'm in some of those rooms right now. Part of what frustrates, like, they also have a bunch of these settings that still make no sense. I actually migrated all my stuff into ChatGPT recently, and you can't share out of it now.
yep,
So actually, I now have to go buy a new ChatGPT account that I can use for work because sharing chats is actually like a core part of my job.
yep.
And it feels very not in the spirit of the deal that I have to do this.
So things are so,
But again, that's also a consideration they never even considered when they were making these decisions because they're not in the classroom.
and they've provided a very basic product at the start. Eventually,
Yeah.
you'll be able to do those things. But like I'm working on coding apps and
Yep.
I can't connect to GitHub. I can't use Codex. I can't do so. I've subscribed to Claude to try out
Yep.
Claude Code.
100%. Claude Code's great too.
Yeah, and so that's kind of where I am. Is like, well, ChatGPT is interesting, but you've nerfed it so badly
Yep.
that
I just started closing their rooms, by the way, so people start showing up. FYI. Sorry, go ahead. Didn't mean to interrupt.
okay, yeah, I just think the utility that folks could discover is just not there.
Yeah. I mean, that these things, I'm hoping that those sorts of decisions just get resolved as people play with them more and, like, the administration gets more angry messages or whatever. But we'll see. Maybe that might just be too optimistic.
We'll have to do, an AI update on where we are.
Yeah. All right. We got people slowly coming back. Gotta say, apparently, again, for those that are back, hey, welcome. Happy to have you back. But also the push to breakout rooms was apparently a real killer for this presentation, but that's fine. Yeah, two more rooms are waiting for it to empty out.
I was happy to steal a little bit of your time where I could ask questions. So,
Oh man, I'm always happy. Ask anyone in the LGG. I'm always annoyingly happy to talk and meet. But anyway, so I hope you all had a really good little meeting where you got to talk, write your own stories, and share them together. Uh, Really quick, because we're about to jump to the share outs and then the Q&A. I did just want to end this by talking about the resources here. So I put together just a bunch of resources. Here's a podcast episode on the AI grief cycle. Here are a few different write-ups, some academic, some not. I actually really like this Garay one, The Death of the Old Teacher. I really liked this. But also, I'm a big believer that part of the solution towards these things is building community, right? Talking with other faculty members, other teachers that and just communally processing some of this. So I wanted to drop a link to the Rocky Mountain AI interest group, as well as the higher ed discussions of AI writing. This is on Facebook if you're like old school. Here is the AI and Ed listserv that I really appreciate. I deeply recommend all of you subscribe to. And also me, feel free to reach out to me. I'm a weirdo who's absolutely glad to just talk about this stuff nonstop, even when it ruins my mental health. And also, here's a folder of resources that I regularly share with faculty feeling lost. So that's yours. Feel free to pilfer from that, and hopefully it gives you some guidance. But anyway, let's now go back into the Q&A, and let's just talk. How did people's story writing go? How did people's sharing go? What did people talk about? Please let me stop talking. One of you talk.
oh, come on, somebody be brave.
Oh, I'm gonna throw Matt under the bus. Matt, I think you should post it in chat. I think we were the only ones who saw it in chat.
Oh,
What you wrote
really?
in chat. Yeah.
I knew you were going to
Okay,
throw
well,
Matt under the bus.
Yeah, I mean,
no, it's all
sorry.
good. Like I'm usually rushing into the breach anyway. I went with a short form social media post that turned into a longer post that I think reveals my current state of grief and in the cycle, referencing Neil Postman, George Orwell, Aldous Huxley, and post literacy, and just a couple of dudes social median social mediating the AI situation.
Love it. Right. And I actually think, again, as a social media post, yeah, 100%. I would see that on like Instagram or Twitter and be like, yep. Right. And I think it's funny, it's trite, things it's witty in a way that feels very Matt, but also it gets at something really real, which is this. It keeps, notice how quick it's churning. Also going from Orwell to Huxley, oof. And also then ending on a nice little call out to the Luddites, who we all kind of forget. The Luddites, they had the wrong solution, but they actually correctly apprised the problem. Like, they were correct. Those technologies did in fact replace their work. That was not an incorrect assessment. They did not solve it, but yeah. But what anyone else? Anyone else have any stuff? Thank you for the bravery, Matt. Anyone else want to throw their story in here and share and also be brave and tell us how they're experiencing these things? What did they write?
I did not write. I cited instead. Okay.
Anything creative is totally fine.
Okay, it's not really creative, but I'll put it there. And this is a shout out to some of the people that I think are here. I don't know how many people have read that the Hacker Manifesto. This is from the 1980s. You can stub out some of the computer stuff for maybe how some people are experiencing AI. I mean, I know we're talking a lot about the grief, but there's a lot of fun with the AI too. There's a lot of fun things you can do. And when I was reading the person who was saying it's killed the joy of my teaching, I'm like going like I have fun with my students playing around with the AI to come up with things. And in our morning show session, as bad as the music as the song was, the AI in Colorado song, as bad as it was fun when they did it, and it was fun at least the first time you listened to it. So I'm more like I'm looking more like for the openings and, harkening back to the Hacker Manifesto in the way that maybe this opens things up for students who weren't relating or didn't, like do things. So
I
that's where
love
I am.
I love that, Kay. Yeah, I earnestly agree that like this opens up opportunities for us to build connections with students too, right? Like one of the things I have my students do is I have them use AI to generate an ad for something, and then we do a rhetorical analysis of that as well as more traditional. And the thing that always comes across from that is like it's really bad in a funny way, right? So we end up, you get like theme bleed and stuff like that, but my students are having fun with it. We're all laughing at this together. I'm getting to underscore my AI literacy things, but also we're all laughing, right? There are opportunities here, but they exist amongst the debris of the things we've lost. And it's hard to have to sift through those. Anyone else? By the way, I'd love for someone to share their story, but also we're at 5 minutes left. So if people want to just Q&A it, I love that too. Fine with whatever people would like. I just want to hear someone else's voice for the next 5 minutes.
You can hear my dulcet tones, Chris. I'm really struggling in my class this semester. I have several students who are in the anger stage of grief, and they want absolutely nothing to do with AI tools. And I've struggled with it. We're talking about it. We had another conversation in class today when we should have been talking about literature. We were talking about AI, and I just fear for them. Like, I fear for them based on like how AI literacy, it's not about being pro AI. I keep hearing people call me pro AI because I am interested in embracing this challenge and trying to find solutions to it. Yet I just wonder how are students looking at the job market? Are they looking at how AI literacy skills are becoming more important in the application and interview process?
Yeah, I mean, at least again, every classroom is different. My experience is students are acutely aware of the job market, right? Like I have quite a few students I have a student who gave me a reading I added to my AI reading list because it was about AI's impact on the comp sci job market. So I think there is some of that, but I think someone made that Luddites, I think it was you made that really great Luddites reference. I think they are in that same headspace. They're angry and their reaction is just rejection rather than actually trying to strategize a way through. Because I'm with you. I am not pro these things. I earnestly think the way that they've rolled out since 2021 has been basically as bad as possible. It's pretty close. But at the end of the day, they are here. And I firmly believe that whatever great chance my students have at having a fulfilling career that's also like economically viable is going to rely, even if they hate these tools, is going to rely on them knowing how to be better than them, right? There is no path forward that involves totally ignoring these tools. Even if you absolutely despise them, knowing how to work better than them and around them is going to be part of that. Anyone else have thoughts on that, though? Is anyone else experiencing similar things, that anger amongst their students? Educator, reading the chat right now. Yeah, I mean, I think that push back for, going into more traditional crafts and trades makes total sense. I think that is absolutely, in my class, I already have every semester for the last 3 semesters now, I've had multiple students who were comp sci students who switched away because of Gen AI. And that's interesting to me, right? That I think for a lot of students, I gave this talk from the faculty point of view because, spoilers, I am faculty, but we gave a similar talk. Boy, before people leave, I'm going to be really annoying and drop this link in chat. But this was the talk we get. We interviewed a bunch of students and talked about debunking common misconceptions that faculty have about the current student experience. And one of the things that came away from that was that students are just as scared and sad as faculty are, just for different things, right? We're mad because our present's been disrupted. They're mad because their present and future have been disrupted in real ways. And, if you're a student, I was mentioning that student earlier who said her parents took out a mortgage to send her to CU. That's a really bittersweet moment to have this realization of, like, I don't even know what I need to do to have a chance at getting a job now, right? Because AI has totally disrupted that roadmap. And so one thing that to keep it really short about that training, one thing I really took away from is that students are just behaving rationally in changing times too. We're all just surfing these changes together. It's just the changes that hit them versus us are a little different. We have 1 minute left. Any other last minute questions, thoughts, attacks? I'd love some criticism. No, just anything people want to talk about. We're officially at 4. I'm going to stay and chill and chat with whoever wants to chill and chat. But also, if you would like to go off, there's a lot of really good talks at 4. Please go off to those. I encourage you to enjoy Elk to its fullest. Thank you for your time today, and thank you for spending an hour with me.